There we go.
Why have I quit my job? Why have I, bought a van? And why am I going to drive around the country? Well, I'm passionate about the idea that you need to be heard. And I want to stitch these stories together across the states. We're going to find the commonalities. And it's going to be really an amazing experience. And I look forward to you joining me on the jar.
Hello, everybody. Good morning or good evening or something, depending on where you are, including my guest, Ivana. Am I saying it correctly, Ivana or Ivana?
Yeah.
Ivana.
Yeah.
Ivana.
Ivana.
Okay. Yeah. And so, welcome everybody to Mental Health Today, and another episode where we're gonna have a chance to dive into somebody who's young and also deeply inside the mental health space. It's quite interesting. So last night I had a really great guest on, very young, but also deeply inside the space, super passionate, and also was about midnight or 1 a.m. for him when we had our chat. So this chat, the Mental Health Today, is sponsored by the JAR Foundation. I'm chairman of that, and also creator and host of the JAR podcast, which you saw the little beginning of, making the van. Before I kind of set out across the U.S. I'm in Little Rock, Arkansas, in my little Airbnb, after having a meeting, doing an interview this morning with a lovely person. That'll be coming up in about 10 days or so. But Ivana, nice to meet you. Thanks for accepting my, kind of weird, inside LinkedIn approach. I'm sending these messages to people I don't know. But we've got the common bond of being in the mental health space. So thanks for being a guest. Thanks for accepting the invite. And I really look forward to hearing your story.
Yeah, happy to be here. And yeah, I'm really passionate about this. I'm happy to talk with like-minded people.
Yes. So tell us about who how did you end up in this space? What was that kind of motivation? What was that, maybe an aha moment or an event that happened, or just kind of a natural, evolution? How did you end up here?
Yeah, so I think that maybe a few factors. So I grew up with two sisters. I'm the oldest, so I needed to kind of take care of my two sisters. And my mom was mostly just her taking care of us. So I would see her every day, like going from working a lot to provide for us. And I felt like, there needs to be some better way, because she had some really terrible boss. And now she's retired just last year. But she had that boss all the time, like maybe 30 years, So it's crazy. So when I started working like 10 years ago, I also experienced something, similar. You have all kinds of people you work with.
Yes, for sure.
And yeah, I wanted to find some better way in this kind of situations, because when we are working with someone, you cannot oftentimes choose who you are working with.
No.
Yeah. So that kind of a little motivation. And I'm also kind of person that likes to look at things from the higher perspective, like big picture. So I was always interested how things work.
Okay.
In corporations and so on, this kind of relationships, politics.
Yes.
So that's kind of two things the most.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a real source of a lot of people's conversations with themselves, right? At least some of them, maybe not a mental health issue per se, but definitely can trigger it and can start you down the road, is work. I think the work conversations, people interactions with other humans there, and, the power structure itself lends itself to a lot of anxiety, right? I mean, you're going into a meeting with a bunch of bosses and you've got to perform. This is not going in for a high school exam, right? This is,
Mm,
it's got some ramifications if you don't do well. And things people
right.
say in the meeting may stick with you.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you said it right. It's like kind of power struggle because there are now maybe some better ways of working, but
Mm,
before there was just like this rigid structure that
yes.
you need to follow. But maybe now it's a little changing, like with agile ways of working, this kind of more flexible ways of structure where there is no kind of someone to tell you you can self-organize a little more.
Mm. Yeah, I had a guest on not too long ago, and one of the things she talked about was being inside this kind of government organization, which I would assume is just like any, when you get deep inside some of the real established parts of the machinery, I think it looks the same in your
Mm,
country as my country as the next country, right? It's the kind
exactly.
of
Yeah.
people that the rules that get into place, and she's talking about, the silliness of the rules, and she ended up in a role where she only had to work about 3 hours a day. She had one report and she didn't even do it. She said, it's not like I even did the report. She's like, I just literally, my first 3 hours were waiting for people to do the report, to send it to me so I could send it to somebody else. And I
Yeah.
just had to make sure that, that report got out, and that was it. And then it's by like 11 a.m. She's like, I was done. But she said the politics and the meetings and the craziness of the people drove her insane. Really
Mm,
drove her to real depression and, like taking medicines and seeing therapists and stuff from just the job.
yeah, I think that's not that uncommon
Mm,
because, if you're working for some bigger organization, especially, um, or like for government, my mom worked for government. So there you go.
yeah.
um, yeah.
No one, I mean, there's slow production. Nobody gets fired. You can't be too aspirational.
Yeah,
Not
it's kind
not
of
every not every job like that, but certainly these
no
older.
every, but there is kind of some safety there, and people
Yes.
can get complacent, and
Mm,
it's like you maybe are happy in one hand because you don't need to work a lot, but on the other
right.
hand, deep inside, you know that it's kind of killing you because
It's
you're not
kind of killing.
expressing yourself. You are kind of
Yes.
dying inside.
Oh,
Um,
I've been there.
So it's kind of something, I don't know if you heard about, like if you are in a cage, doesn't matter, is it golden cage or is it, like metal cage?
A lot of people in senior leadership in corporations have built their own golden cage and put themselves inside. We
Yeah,
all have the key. We all have our key,
exactly.
but it's whether or not we choose to, whether we're brave enough to reach in our pocket and unlock our own cage.
Right.
What are you doing now? Tell the audience a bit about what you're doing now. What's your day, what's your passion, and yeah, tell us a little bit about your work.
Yeah. So I actually wrote a book about how to approach these politics and situations at work.
Hmm.
And you can find it on my website. But the inspiration for that book was from the company I worked for and all these experiences I had because here is my website. So it was my third book. So
Wow.
I passionate about writing as well. And I like fairy tales, so I mix it with some fairy tales.
Oh, okay.
And here is a fairy tale about the wolf and little Red Riding Hood. And we don't know who is the culprit. Nobody is innocent in the story. it's all about how you appear to others, right? So I kind of
Okay.
want to make it interesting, so that you learn something, but it's a fun read.
Yes, yes.
Um, so what I'm currently doing is helping people who um, experience especially some emotional
Hmm.
problems, and mental problems, psychological problems at work. I have clients. I was in Shanghai until COVID hit. Well, during COVID, actually. So this is where I also realized, even sometimes, as you mentioned, many of my clients didn't work that much. Maybe they had just a few hours per
Hmm.
day of work, especially during COVID, but they were very
Yes.
depressed,
Yeah.
in a very difficult state. And this is not just then, it's still ongoing, because maybe we didn't deal with some of our issues that happened at that time,
Mm.
or were just emphasized and we just realized it at that point.
Yeah, I think a bit of both, right? It, you know, it
Yeah,
definitely
for sure.
took away some of the masks or masking, and you really were left to face yourself in the mirror. And some people struggle
Yeah,
with that.
nowhere to escape.
You have nowhere to escape, right? Yeah, and your usual coping mechanisms. Maybe work is a place for you to thrive, right? Maybe work is a place where your identity is. A lot of people.
Yeah, you cannot without work.
Right, right. They are the persona they have built around the office is really who they are. It's a big part of their life, not who they are only, but it's a big part of their life. And if that goes away, it's very difficult to recapture that moment. Um,
Mm.
the way you were describing the book, and I just was wondering, are you giving speeches around this or trainings around this? Because it seems like really like very HRE and very like just lovely for an HR person to grab this and say, come give a talk around this or give some train if you have training around it.
Yeah, yeah, I have course that is related to
Okay.
the book. Yeah, and you can also check it on the website, or just contact me, um, as we did on LinkedIn, right? Some people
Yes.
approach me on LinkedIn. Yeah, for sure, because that's a whole kind of process, because you need to first become aware, where where in which situation you are psychologically, emotionally,
Mm.
and what contributed to this state, and how to understand your environment better, because I was dealing also with some difficult situations that people needed to quit or were fired,
Hmm.
and how to deal with that. Um,
Oh, okay. This is it for like
especially,
for a client.
yeah, yeah. So I had one client who was given a lot of work, and at first she didn't know why. So what was happening? Or another client was assigned another role, where he didn't know, that area that much. Um, I think he was like a tester,
Oh,
and
okay.
then he was given a job of like to talk with the clients and so on, and he just didn't like communication that much.
Well, wait a minute. They give a guy who loves to be behind the computer doing testing, talking to a computer. They said, "Oh, now you can talk to the people all day long."
Yeah, well, that's a whole setup, right? They
Oh,
need
yeah,
to
that
have
sounds.
something, to fire you on some ground.
Oh, I see. So that's the beginning of the
And
end.
then, yeah, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
they
yeah.
would bring someone to evaluate you.
Oh, that's so mean.
Yeah.
That is so
So,
mean. You're gonna torture somebody before you fire them.
right. There are all kind of tactics, you wouldn't believe.
And so you mostly have individuals as clients.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you thought about because I just, hearing you talk and hearing the way you're structured, I think you'd be like, it'd be a great corporate talk.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
for sure.
Yeah, I think you're
I
training,
did have
yeah,
some,
yeah.
it wasn't for some big corporations, but I did have some talks in some centers, and like there are some organizations that really care, like non-profit, that care
Hmm.
about mental health. So
Yeah.
that's mostly where I had it. Yeah.
And I'll give a talk on behalf of them.
Yeah, or
Hmm.
workshop.
Interesting. Um, are you seeing anything, you know, are you seeing anything new? I mean, at this post COVID, is it really just those things we talked about? Are you seeing an increase, a decrease, or an increase in a certain kind of, an anxiety or depression coming out of COVID now? And how are people adapting? I guess maybe
Mm,
kind of a two-part question.
yeah, all good questions. So, in my experience, I would say that actually we are just now seeing the effects of what was happening.
Okay.
It's, I
Okay.
think, going to follow even the next decade, I think.
Okay.
um, it feels like there is a lot of to unpack here, and
Hmm.
many people even quit because I think, as you mentioned, they cannot deal with this kind of situations. One of my clients quit, and the next week his company went bankrupt where he was working.
I don't know
So
what it sounds funny. I don't know if it's good or bad, but it does sound like some. Oh,
yeah, so there are all kinds of situations. I mean, some people leave because they cannot stand it anymore, and others are like let go in some ways that are maybe not as good.
hmm.
There are, I think, all kinds of situations, and yeah. So to answer your question, like things are changing, maybe in a way that we are becoming more aware of our own problems, and
Okay.
now
Uh,
I also
That's great.
see that.
Yeah.
At first, I would mostly work with women, but now I see more men contact me, so I don't know. I think it's great. But I also have like a background. So I'm married. My husband had some difficult time
Okay.
because he got sick. So then, it was difficult because he also needed to deal with some issues, like all of us from his childhood, right? And these are all
Oh.
connected things. So I learned a lot also through that experience. Because all of this is like when we were very little, all these patterns can repeat.
Hmm.
Like I experienced maybe at work what happened with my mom, that's not completely
Uh,
unrelated.
yeah, you found a mom boss and you enter into the daughter mom thing at work. It's kind of weird and freaky, but a real thing. Yeah, but a real thing. Yeah, that's. I mean, the way you talked about the effects of COVID not yet really being seen, and it's
Mm,
kind of those kind of pause and going, "Wow, that makes a lot of like, wow, that's bad," and that makes a lot of
mm,
sense. And then, of course, you bring the childhood part in, and these are people are we're still. I mean, so many of my guests we talk about childhood trauma, stuff that's left over from childhood. So, the COVID stuff, the experience of isolation, locking people up, masking kids for in some places for 2 years. Just
mm,
imagine how bananas that's going to come back when these people are when these kids grow up and they're
mm, yeah.
27 or 47 and they're trying to have communicate. They're trying to formulate social cues, trying to understand at work, what a social cue is. And they missed a lot of formative stuff when they were younger by not be seeing each other in class. Yeah, so there is
Mm.
a lot of, yeah, I didn't think about that. There's a lot. We're going to be unpacking this for a while, aren't we?
Yeah, and we can see that actually, like how many are there like suicides, how many
Hmm.
are also people getting sick, because that's all connected, with stress,
Yes,
with all kinds of things. So
that
because I
data will.
always
Yeah,
say,
that data is going to. It slowly just comes out, right? Every month we'll have all the data.
yeah, yeah, and it like kind of accumulates
Hmm.
through life.
Yes.
Um, Especially, I think it's dangerous if we do not know how to deal with our emotions, if they are like
Mm.
bottled up, because that's where you make wrong decisions in some stressful situations, and don't and then later maybe when you think about it, I don't know why I said it, I don't know why I did it, because because you don't know how to clear that kind of.
Oh, you're still holding it. Yeah, and you're not even
Mm.
aware of its impact on you,
Yeah, until it's
especially in
triggered.
those, in certain situations when triggered, right? And you don't know what happened. Like I had no idea. I just lost my mind. That's not me.
Yeah, it can
Oh,
happen, yeah, to the best. Even to me, it can happen, that you say something or do something, but you're unaware, like, why did I
yeah.
do that?
Yeah, it for sure it happens. What are you thinking about next? What's in your, what's your next book about, or your next adventure, or where you are, there's, I don't know if you know that there's a great hockey player, Canadian hockey player, Wayne Gretzky. And one
Hmm.
of his famous, and he was a real goal scorer. And they used to ask, one of his famous quotes was, he was asked, how do you, why are you always in the right place? And he used to, and how do you score so often? He said, I always go where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is. So
Yeah.
where's the puck going? Where are you headed in mental health? What's next?
Yeah, I think it's hard to know for sure, because, as you know, like, world is changing so quickly,
Hmm.
and we cannot maybe know even what will happen in the next 5 minutes. you know,
That's
like
us.
like, for example, the earthquake. Um, these people, when sleeping, in the next 5 minutes, your whole world is changed.
Hmm.
I think that I follow maybe like my clients' wishes and see where that goes,
Ah, yeah.
more than uh, like in general situation or trends or things like that.
Hmm.
Um,
What's your next? You have how many books written? You said three.
Three.
Three. Are you working on one now?
Well, I'm always working on something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that what I realized helps people the most is when I express myself maybe in poems, like, so they
Oh,
can take it deeper. So that was my
interesting.
last book about, I included some poems about different situations that many I heard related to. So I think the words have a lot of healing in them if we allow them, even when we are listening, if, that's our intention, and also written word. Um,
Hmm.
so I think that I for sure would like more about healing,
Hmm.
because I always talk about kind of, what is negative energy, right?
Yes.
It's at work, perhaps when you feel like, I don't want to be there, maybe. So similarly, there is positive energy that
Hmm.
can heal that.
I I mean, that's so, for me, hits so sweetly, that words, because you've got to be right, because I'm a firm believer that opposites and balance in the universe is, balance in the universe is a real thing. And words can for sure hurt people. Words can be a weapon. They really can
Yeah.
hurt people,
Yeah. For
and
sure.
leave a deep scar. Especially,
Mm,
especially depends on who they're said by, and what the situation. Um, so I would believe what you said. Words can also heal.
for
Um,
sure. That's
it's
my
a
experience.
beautiful. It's a beautiful thought. Um, Not a thought, right? It's a reality. So, I mean, for me, it's a thought right now. I'm going to try to get my head around it. And I just love that idea that words can heal. Um, and
Yeah.
that's powerful. That means we've got a lot of power. So you're going to work on
Mm,
poems. You think your next book will just be poetry?
yeah. Yeah, I think so. Maybe some of my experiences in the
Yeah.
last few years.
Yeah. And just kind of pour it out in a poem.
Yeah, I like to do that. I think it's also healing if you write something, like a poem.
Yeah.
I at first thought that, I cannot really write any poem like a real poet, It
Yes.
was kind of, high.
Yeah. Yeah. Who can do that? Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But over time, you just start writing and you realize some things start to rhyme and it becomes kind of cool to continue. And you become, I guess, more and more into it. And you
Yes.
realize when you read some of your past poems, like from the last few years, how much you changed. And it kind of, uh, you start looking at your life from some other perspective. Maybe you weren't aware at the time.
Yeah. I think it's a bit like journaling in that way, that you have a record of
Hmm.
you record your thoughts.
Yeah, but you also kind of your emotions, like
Yeah.
express yourself. Yeah, I think that's the most important.
If you can heal with words, and reading the words, and maybe speaking somebody else, read a poem, and it can, what is it like when you write the poem, right? And like you said, and you look down and you've written something, and it rhymes, and it makes sense, and it has maybe two or three meanings, maybe even a meaning you're not aware of because the reader's not hasn't read it yet, but you can see it's kind of cool. Is that
Mm.
also pretty healing?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I was on a podcast earlier today, and it was about people my age, and it was a man show, men kind of
Hmm.
retiring, kind of, that transitioning, from corporate life, work life, whatever that looks like, working to something else, at an age around 60ish. And so we were talking about leaving work, and we were talking about corporate, and I was sharing with them, one of the I've written something like poems is music, very similar to poetry, because you've got
Hmm.
some beat and you've got some rhythm, and should have some rhythmic feel to it. And I was, kind of saying, yeah, I wrote one about, corporate when I was a free man. When I finally quit, I wrote a song called Free Man. And it really is about being a boy and the wonderment of being able to dream who you're going to be.
Hmm.
And then that's not really a reality. You end up becoming somebody else. And the things, selling your soul, doing the things to keep the job and chase the money and chase the title and chase the role,
Hmm.
and please the boss, and the
Hmm.
sacrifices you make. And, really, when I realized at the end of it was, but if you're going to get your life back as your own, if you're going to get that life back as your own, right? Uh, you're going to have to make the sacrifice. And so mine was, you know, the looking at the cost I had paid to
Hmm.
become who I was, and the irony of throwing it all away,
Hmm.
and walking and walking away, right, from it, and all the things you had paid, and then you throw it all away in a reverse kind of a way. And I think that's the pain. That's that key I talked about, and the key of the golden cage. I was in my own golden cage, and, to get the bravery to pull it out of your own pocket and unlock your own cage and let yourself out. And I hope people can find the bravery to do that. Find a coach like Ivana to kind of help you walk that, to open that cage and get out and, stretch your legs and stretch your arms and find out who you're going to be, who you can be, and being a lot happier being yourself, which I think we talked about. A lot of people are on that journey.
Yes, for sure. I think we're going in that direction.
Yeah.
Of healing ourselves.
Yeah, really healing yourself. And, you got to start by taking that first step. Asking for help, or, looking in the mirror or reading some books and, kind of try getting on that roadmap, getting back on that road. How about some closing thoughts, Ivana? How about some, help us through some, what are you thinking? Any closing message, any cheerleader message? Can you muster anything up at 2 a.m.? What have you got left in here?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, like, your life can change in any moment, for the worse or for the better, but the same way you can change that life, any time, at any moment that you decide this. So I think this is where your power lies, in that decision.
Yeah.
And it can happen anywhere you choose, and anytime you choose.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a lovely message. I like that there's a lot we can't control, but this part of getting your life back, you can absolutely 100% are in control.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful message. Yeah, beautiful message. Thanks, Ivana, again for taking time out. Sit around for just another minute, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks, everybody, for listening and supporting everything we're doing here, trying to really give a platform to professionals and people in the mental health space. Provide some more awareness, get rid of this stupid stigma around it, and have some real conversations with people, in this case, all around the world and at craziest hours. That's how committed people are. I love it. Thanks again, Ivana. And thank you, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, loose, baby.
But we're about to go and make this vessel with these great professionals in public glass. We're not part of the community, but we're from the outer family of glass blowing. Yeah, we're gonna go make a magical giant jar with optic lenses so that if you turn it, it changes all the time. So if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.